This video is part 33 of a series documenting a 6-month-long bicycle tour that started without a destination. I called it Bicycle Touring Talk to be found in searches, but the entire playlist is named after my book, Destinations Are Fake. If you're thinking of getting into bicycle touring, this series is for you. I started this tour as a novice and made it my mission to share everything about it. Hope you enjoy. I got up earlier than usual and even met up with Pedro and Maria as they were getting ready to leave their house. Maria was kind enough to provide me with a sandwich and a cup of hot coffee. I was somewhere in Tabasco and had slept in an abandoned house. I am George Schlacek,
the one and only.
And this is Bicycle Touring Talk, episode number 33. If you've seen some of my previous episodes, you already know that it's all in my book, Destinations Are Fake. Link in the description. After a quick goodbye, I was all set to start my ride along the Gulf Shore. I was determined to keep riding until I was in Cuidad del Carmen. On the map, it looked like a 100-kilometer ride, but in reality it was actually 140. The flat coastal road and a strong tailwind both worked in my favor that day. The road might have been really boring if not for the fast and easy ride. For much of the trip I was in the zone, feeling like Superman. No matter how hard I pushed myself, I didn't get tired. I only made 2 stops the entire day. One was for lunch at some roadside place where the waitress had trouble making change for 100 pesos, and the other was to take a dive in the ocean at a deserted stretch of white sandy beach. The only problem I encountered was a brutally hot sunshine that caused me to slap on extra sunscreen more than once. Finally, late in the afternoon, I arrived at a long bridge that led across a lagoon to the island, Isla del Carmen. There was a police checkpoint at the approach. Those checkpoints are quite common across Mexico. Usually, the officers don't bother with the touring cyclists. But this time was different. A young officer waved me over.
Pasaporte, por favor.
I pulled out my passport and handed it to him. The officer, who couldn't have been more than 20 years old, appeared to study my passport intensely and then looked at me.
Esta foto no se parece a usted.
I wasn't sure what to tell him. Perhaps I had lost weight from riding the bike? But I was pretty confident my appearance had not changed that much, especially since I had maintained a clean-shaven look throughout my tour. Perhaps that guy was fishing for a bribe? I told him to take a second look and reassured him that I was the guy in the passport. No me crees? I had other ID to back it up. When the kid started to lecture me about how I was responsible for my passport picture being up to date, a supervisor walked over to join us.
¿Cuál es el problema?
He wanted to know. After the first officer showed him my passport, he laughed and asked me how many kilometers I had cycled so far on my trip. I told him that I wasn't really sure, but my trip had started in Canada. He then smiled and turned to the other officer. As far as I understood, he told him not to bother me and let me pass, adding that it was normal to lose some weight during a long bicycle tour.
Have a great day and stay safe, sir.
He addressed me in English. What followed next was a ride across a 3-kilometer long bridge, Puente el Zacal. It was a 2-lane roadway with a narrow shoulder. I was nervous the entire way because cars were passing frequently, too close to my handlebars. As soon as I entered the city, I was basically lost. At first, I was looking for a store that would have some snacks and a cold drink. I was feeling very thirsty. Once those needs were met, the search for a room had me running all over town. I found a place for only 50 pesos a night, but it really wasn't sufficient. It was a private residence. A lady was renting out her spare bedrooms. The one she showed me was dirty and cramped. There wasn't even enough space for my bike, so I passed. It was the right decision because eventually I found a very nice hotel with all the amenities for 180 pesos. After checking in, I decided to check my email using the hotel Wi-Fi. There was an email from my old friend Muriel. I wasn't sure what to expect. Her message was brief. She was married only for appearances, and what she did on the side was nobody's business. There also was an attachment, a slideshow. It started out with a picture of two masked men holding a third man captive whose arms and legs were tied up. In the subsequent images, the captive's clothes were cut away with a knife. The blade must have been hot because next the perpetrators cut into his flesh along his limbs and torso, seemingly without causing a lot of bleeding. They were somewhere outside in an open and hilly area, much like some of the ones I had passed with my bike. The following images showed vultures. First just 1, then 3, 10, and still getting more. It was clearly visible what was happening to the captive man. The birds ate him alive, little by little. A shiver and cold sweat ran down my spine, but I could not resist watching to the end. Sure enough, at the end, the two masked men appeared again, carrying a bare skeleton. Muriel's comment to it all was that this was happened to narcos. I could not help but wonder. Perhaps she was angry with me? Was she trying to scare me? The attachment sure gave me some insight into her character, and I was glad we had met up in Coatzacoalcos. The last thing I needed was an overly demanding female trying to chip away at my newfound freedom. As terrible as those images were, they were just pictures. She could have gotten them anywhere. I made the decision to shrug it off and forget about the email. Screw Muriel. Simple enough. I had another surprise that evening. This time it was a good one. Just before sunset, I decided to ride my bike to the beach. Quite amazingly, there was an actual bike lane all along the shore. Cyclists with all sorts of bikes, even high-end road bikes, were on it. The road it was on was practically free of other traffic. Cyclists had completely taken it over. I rode it to the end and landed at the Playa del Norte, at the north side of the city. I went for a quick swim before returning to my hotel via the port area, where I didn't get to see much besides fenced-in industrial installations. I stayed in Cuidad del Carmen for 2 nights. The city was worth exploring, and I really needed a rest day. I was blessed with a day of sunshine. In the morning, I spent a few hours at the fish market taking photos of pelicans. They knew exactly where to hang out. The afternoon went by just walking around town to see things. At one point, I sat down on a park bench and ate an orange. A huge squirrel appeared and jumped right into my lap. The bugger just stole a piece of the orange right out of my hand. What nerves. He wasn't afraid of my camera neither, so I took pictures. I went to bed not long after dark that day. My room had cable TV and I found a movie channel which helped me unwind along with a cold beer. The next day was going to take me further down the coast. I left Ciudad del Carmen early in the morning. The road along Isla del Carmen was close to the shore. All I could think of was to go swimming in the ocean again. I eventually found a perfect spot when the weather was scorching hot, with sunshine so intense that I could feel the burn right through the layers of sunscreen. The water was cool and crystal clear. It felt great and refreshed me for the road ahead. I had to slap on more sunscreen and replenish my energy with the snacks I had packed, oranges and tortilla chips. The ride was quiet and lonely despite beautiful scenery. The wind had picked up and was certainly not blowing in my direction. At least the road was flat and had a good shoulder to cycle on. According to the map, there was just one town within my reach. Sabancuy was a small spot. I couldn't be sure what kind of accommodation would be available, but its location across the lagoon looked quite promising. It took a small eternity to reach the turnoff, but it was a great relief when I finally did. Turning away from the coast made a difference immediately as I no longer had to work against the wind. After crossing a narrow bridge, I arrived in Sabancuy. A sign was letting me know that there was a hotel here. It took only a few minutes to find it and offered a comfortable room at a fair price. I badly needed a shower, so that was the first thing I did after checking. The water was not heated, but it felt just about perfect. I was tired, but also very hungry and thirsty. A good supper would be essential for replenishing my energy reserves. I put on some fresh clothes and left the hotel. I walked around a lot more than I had planned. There was a lot to see. Life was busy in this little town. Finally, I found a restaurant with a huge charcoal barbecue and ordered the daily special. It was mostly rice and beans with a good chunk of beef, enough to satisfy my appetite. Along with it, I gobbled down close to a gallon of water. I liked Sabancuy and could envision going back to spend an entire vacation there. But I had to get to Cancun and decided to move on the next day. After a night of solid sleep, I thought I could reach the city of Campeche in a day without knowing the exact distance. An early start was going to be the key. Fatigue was showing its face early that day. As soon as I left Sabancuy, a strong headwind seemed determined to turn me around. I ignored it and fell into a rhythm of labored pedaling until I reached the open highway, Mexico 180. The wind was even harsher near the shore, but pushing sideways with all its force, which wasn't helping my efforts. Occasional gusts were strong enough to force me off the road. The wind persisted pretty much throughout the entire day, making the ride incredibly slow. The ride to Campeche turned out to be one of the toughest I remember. I had lunch in Champoton, a small town along the route. There was a simple eatery that was serving nothing but grilled chicken with rice, veggies, and tortillas. Chickens were strutting around my table as I was eating one of their buddies. Did they know what was going on? I allowed myself a few minutes to explore Champoton and even asked around for a hotel. There weren't any, so I hopped back on the bike and headed for Campeche. The ride continued very slow and in a lower gear, still battling the wind. I eventually reached Campeche via a bypass route that added a few extra kilometers, but took me away from the wind. Now I had to find the hostel the stranger in Cardenas had told me about. It was easy since it was located right across from the downtown park in a great setting. There was also a huge cathedral and city hall. There were plenty of people, many of them apparently tourists. However, the hostel didn't turn out to be suitable for me and my bike, so I decided to look for another place. I walked around for about an hour, pushing the bike through old streets with cobblestone pavement. What struck me as very unusual even for a Mexican city were the higher than normal sidewalks that made it really hard to push the bike. There were plenty of hotels. Some friendly tourists eagerly told me where they were staying and how much they liked it. Eventually, I found a place in my price range. It was beautifully kept and my room seemed like it might have been 100 years old, with walls and furniture painted in bright colors and a very pretty tile floor. The place had a unique kind of simplicity about it. I was tired from the long ride, but Campeche was interesting. After a shower and a short nap, I was back out in the streets to see the sunset. There was a long boardwalk just outside the historic gate to the old city. There were many great places to eat, but they were more expensive than in other parts of Mexico. Campeche was a tourist hotspot, like I hadn't seen up to that point. It was a sign of my proximity to the Yucatan Peninsula, but at the time I didn't know that. It was a big change from being the only tourist in town. At first I enjoyed the change, but then I started wondering where the beach was. There also had to be a market. All coastal cities I had visited had beaches within city limits, but not Campeche. An inquiry at a busy tourist information office revealed that I would have to backtrack several miles along the shore to find the Playa Bonita. And then, why do you want to go to the market? The tourist information lady was wondering out loud. I explained the market would be a perfect place to experience the local atmosphere, eat local food, and meet local people. The lady shrugged and gave me rough directions. I couldn't help but wonder if there was something wrong with that market. Was it something tourists weren't supposed to see? I decided to go to the market for breakfast the next morning. Then I would check out the Playa Bonita. I hope you'll join me for that. So why not hit the subscribe button right now, right now, right now. Did you like this video? Well, then hit the like button too, and check out what else you can find on my channel. I'll see you next time. Woohoo!